Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've talked about the comic business a lot, and I enjoy talking about it. It's not the most popular topic on this channel, but it's something that I have some expertise in elsewhere. It's something that I think people in the comic industry, when they listen to this channel, these are probably the videos that they appreciate the most, and the videos where I'm saying like, I'm bitching about something is obviously what they don't appreciate. The hard part is, for this channel, I get up and I talk about kind of what's on my mind and I answer emails, and it's just meant to be a conversation like a comic store. And if you go in a comic store and you have a good relationship, and I think those are a bit of a dying breed. I still go to a lot of comic shops anytime I can, and I'm in a place, I'll pull over, I'll go in the comic shop, and get a feel for it, and I kind of size up what's going on there, and you could tell when it has a friendly kind of neighborly attitude, and where you have people who want to talk comics and kind of engage in that kind of stuff, or when the contrary. It's just it's like they're selling their Funko Pops and they have their tabletop games, and it's just there's a wall between the customer and the person running the shop. I think more and more you're getting that second type, partly just because retail is overall dying a bit, and it's just it takes time, and increasingly it's a volume business such as it is. But the shame of it is, I'd really love to have more conversations with people in the industry. Creators, certainly, the people I've talked to have been great. The conversations with Mark Miller, who has interest in the comic industry, or Sean, who has a lot of interest in the comic industry. But I do talk to editors, to former chief creative officers, to others, and we talk with the business stuff. It always like, oh, it's a cute idea, but it wouldn't work. And it frustrates me because I'm pretty sure this stuff would work. And, as proof, I've successfully ran a lot of businesses and consulted for companies that have a much higher net worth, and gross earnings than comics. And these ideas are not groundbreaking, earth shattering ideas. I would happily loan time, billable time to DC at this point, to help, hey, this is how you should steer your business. These are things you should do. It would be enjoy. It would be like giving something back to comics. But unfortunately, the videos where I talk about, hey, why are we continuing to go down the path of legacy character reboots and other things, and this just isn't working. And by the way, entire comics that have no purpose to them, like that Spider-Man eating episode, that will forever kill it. Although, let's be honest, I have friends who are friendly and do nothing but kind of sycophantic love to comics, and they don't get tapped either. So whatever, the comic industry, it has to want to help itself, I guess. But this is one of those business topics, and it's a case of you get something that is on the right path, and then it's a missed opportunity. So here's an email asking about something. If you're not a Canadian citizen, you probably don't know this place, but you'll still get the message. You don't have to be Canadian or enjoy maple syrup to get this. It says, "Hey Perch, I'd love to hear your thoughts on a recent licensing deal between Loblaws, a major Canadian grocery chain, and Marvel. The promotion features Marvel-themed displays and merchandise, but based on what I've seen locally, they're only offering a children's picture and activity books, no comics." This is true. It is a licensing deal. They did one with Kroger as well, and it's got Marvel displays, it's got Marvel characters, and the comic book versions of them, not the like the movie versions, but actually drawings of the characters, and then they have activity books, coloring books, kind of various Marvel-y things, but no comics, no graphic novels, just that kind of stuff. And there's a reason for that. We'll get into it, but let's finish the mail. It says, "Do you think Marvel missed a chance to engage these new readers by not including comics?" Well, obviously, yes. Also, could they have used this opportunity to address ongoing issues in mainstream comics, such as improving accessibility or exploring manga-style digests? Now, DC has done this. They took that idea and they ran with it. And I've heard from inside of DC that at least my comments, and I don't know, I got somebody's ear, and they did reference me in putting that together. I don't, I'm not taking credit for it because it's a fucking obvious idea, as you see Dogman and manga being sold everywhere. So I I did not believe I had any part to do with any of that. And I wouldn't be so arrogant as to assume I did. But I did hear from somebody in DC that my name came up as pushing this idea. So that's cool. Anyway, given that Marvel, and there was some pitch stuff that went over to DC that specifically talked about this, 2-3 years ago even. Anyway, whatever. All right, given that Marvel Adventures was once available in a digest format, might reviving that line have been a smart move? Looking forward to your perspective. Well, I mean, first off, yes, it definitely was a missed opportunity. I think comics, the biggest problem, and I die on this hill, is the distribution. And the distribution is the number one problem for comics because that is their biggest way to engage new readers, ultimately broaden their line. That is what distribution hurts. You can't pull in new readers with new characters, or hey, we're going to change this. We're going to change the writing in Miles Morales, or again, even if you buy the premise of having a younger Black Spider-Man will pull in younger Black readers. First of all, I think on the whole, that's a slightly racist thing to say. I mean, the comic books have gone all in on that, and every time that's said, I always feel I don't know, it just feels wrong. It's like, hey, if you want to have Black people reading your comic, you better have a Black person in it. That feels racist to me. It feels like at one point somebody would have called that out as being kind of blatantly offensive. But what do I know? But even if you buy that premise, if you don't broaden the distribution, if you don't get the comics somewhere other than comic shops, and this is coming from a guy who's a retailer of a comic shop, if you don't do that, you're not even going to reach that hypothetical, Black kid who wants to read the Black superhero, or frankly, any other, of all races, people that want to read these characters. You need to meet them where they are. They don't know a comic shop exists, or even if they do, there's not enough comic shops to go around. So it's a fundamentally broken problem, what they have. So, I think until that gets fixed, you're hosed. You're hosed in terms of, being able to bring in new content. So, I think that's problem number one. So definitely a missed opportunity. The other thing, though, is this, and by the way, why did it work out this way? Well, frankly, because it wasn't Marvel, the comics division, that did this licensing deal. It was Disney. It was Disney licensing who come up with a promotion for Marvel, did this kind of thing. It's disconnected from the comics. That's another problem. And so they went with the material they had on hand, and that turned out to be activity books and coloring books and other things that Disney Press and the entity formerly known as Disney Press could do. And that's what's going on. If you pick one of those books up and you turn it around, my bet is you will not see that it was produced by Marvel Comics. You'll see that it was produced by some kind of Marvel Disney. It'll be a different entity that basically produced that thing. And so that disconnected business unit is another problem that goes on. Marvel, the comics division, will routinely take credit for these things when it benefits them and ignore them when they don't, but generally ignore the overall startup. Having digests there, having kind of manga-sized version of this thing, similar to what DC is doing now, would have been a great idea. But and I think that's the format to run with. But let's say for a moment you didn't have that option and you're dealing with floppies. The old floppies that you and I, or maybe you and I don't know, that I used to read in the grocery store 20 years ago when they used to be there at the newsstand. It wouldn't be the dumbest idea to try and recreate parts of the newsstand. Frankly, I think you have to. And it will be hard. And you got to deal with returnability. And the business model is done. I've said before, you don't have people going into the grocery store hanging out like I did when I was a kid. I mean, it was common that we'd go in for groceries, and my mother would take 20 minutes getting groceries, and I'd go to the comic books and I'd read my way through 4 comic books during that time, and then look forward to going to the grocery store again so I could get to the next batch. And every week, new comics. I mean, it was perfect. I mean, I loved it. I loved going there reading those comics. Anyway, much later in life, I realized, oh, what a dick I've been. I'm basically going in there and reading these things for free. But whatever. But I think it would be a smart idea to do a promotion like this, and then pick your 4 best comics. Don't try it. You can't send everything there. Just the logistics of it. You have to slowly work your way back up to the power of what the newsstand was. But what you can do is you can get the Avengers, Spider-Man, X-Men. I don't know. You can get 4 comics in there, your biggest 4, and throw them in there. Don't try and be silly. Don't experiment like by putting, Captain Marvel or Daredevil or even Miles Morales in there. I know he's got the movie, but you got to go with like the biggest of the big. You got your Amazing Spider-Man, you got your Avengers, you probably have your X-Men, and that's probably where you want to start. Those 3. And then eventually, and this is where you want to be clever and leverage the movies. It's like, okay, there's been several Captain America movies. Let's get Captain America in there. Let's get the Hulk in there. Let's get Thor in there. Yeah, and eventually you get to like Black Panther and Captain Marvel, and you just slowly build your way out. But you don't toss something you're hoping will work. But start with like 3 or 4 comics. That's it. Get the grocery store used to carrying these things. Even in a floppy format, I think that would work. Now, I think smarter business for sure at this point would be go digest. And I think start to present them as the digest is the cheaper version that has a couple of these issues here. And if you want the real original, the best art presented the absolute best way the artist intended and everything else, you got to go to the floppy. And eventually you can kind of work your way back up into this business. But that's what you need to do. You've got to solve the distribution problem. You just have to. If you don't, I think you need new readers. You absolutely do. I've seen videos rail against like, comics don't need new readers. Of course they do. It's absurd to say otherwise, but you're not going to be able to just catch them in the comic shop. That's insane. I remember Jeff Thorne and I used to talk about this, and this was one of the areas we had heavy agreement on, and it's like he articulated it incredibly well. And by the way, I need to do a full video of it. And a lot of you will think I'm just saying this because Jeff, but I haven't talked to Jeff on the air, as a program for a while. It's been at least a year, probably 2 years at this point since I've talked to him. His the new X-Men launch, the From the Ashes and everything else, I think his X-Force is hands down the best. It is the one that is the story and is the most coherent. It's easy to pick up. It's easy to go along. It's continuing the streak of X-Force being the most readable comic. I need to do just an overall review of how the X lineup is doing from my perspective here in a bit. But so far he's winning. Now there's a couple more books to come. I know we've got a few more that haven't come out yet. We haven't seen this exceptional X-Men yet. Don't have huge hopes for that. But X-Force by Jeff Thorne, I think, is the winner at the moment. And I like the straightforward storyline. I like what they're doing, and I like that we're actually using Forge in a meaningful way again. That's nice too. I know it's this is kind of sad praise, but I also love the fact that you've got Jeff on a book, and you didn't just say, well, let's give him just the Black X-Men because he's black, which is what these comic companies continue to do. I mean, Christopher Priest obviously has talked about this before, but I mean, I continue to find that absurd as well. It's like, Brian Edward Hill, I still think is a great writer. I think there's a lot he can do. I'm glad he's enjoying doing, Ultimate Black Panther, but also, I would read Ultimate Doctor Strange by Hill, for what it's worth. Oh well. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail, and thanks for listening.